Do you need to move it up a little bit? Or... Hi guys, welcome to the NavCoin Education Series live stream. Can everyone hear me and see me and all that kind of stuff? Holler out in the chat if you can, can't, or whatever. I've got a new lapel mic today, so hopefully it's coming through loud and clear on the audio. Yeah. Might just see how many people are on the stream at the moment.
There's 6 people, 4 thumbs up, 7. Paul can hear. It's
awesome.
Echoey, but that's okay. Everyone can hear us.
Cool. All right. Well, we may as well just get started, I guess. There's a lot of content to get through, so I just want to basically plow into it, and then we'll hopefully have some time for Q&A at the end of the session. So, as we have talked about, we're doing today's live stream is on the NavCoin Community Fund, which we're hoping to release pretty soon, hopefully next week, depending on how all the testing goes. And we just want to talk through how that really works, so everyone's aware of the mechanic and how to get involved. So we're going to start by talking about how coins are added to the fund, right? So how is the community fund? How is it funded? How does that work? So effectively, when the community, we've already had the accumulation of the community fund going for a couple of months now, and there's about 75,000 NavCoin in the community fund. And the way that they're generated is that every block, 0.25 NAV are generated by the person who mines the block, and that's now part of the consensus rules. They have to generate that amount, and those funds aren't sent anywhere. They don't go to us. We don't have like an address that sits there and collects these coins. The way that it works is that these coins are actually burnt when they're created. So what I mean by burning coins. Usually when you send coins to someone, they have basically a conditional, a set of conditions attached to them, which means that, they have a set of conditions attached to them, which is how the person you're sending them to is able to then spend them. So we talked about this in some of our previous live streams, a bit about how transactions work, but effectively, if A sends to B, attached to this transaction is the conditions that for B to then send to someone else, they need to prove that they own those coins by signing the transaction with the private key that owns it, and that they can't send more, the amount has to equal or be less than the amount that was input, and all these types of things. So that's a normal transaction. With the ones that are generated for the community fund, effectively this condition is always going to equal false. So there's no way of getting the community fund coins by providing any type of signature. So when these coins are created, they're attached with a condition that says these can never be spent. So these coins are generated at 0.25 NAV coins per block, and then they are effectively locked away in a way that no one can access them. So this is how funds are accumulated into the community fund. You can also actually make a manual donation. So I can send funds from my wallet, NAV coins that already exist and haven't just been mined into existence, and donate them to the community fund as well if I wanted to. So that's the two major methods that coins can be accrued into the fund. So that's how coins are generated or added to the fund. And as I said, those coins can't actually be spent. So I want to talk you through how the funds are actually claimed, right? So if these coins are burned and can never be spent, how does someone get coins when they make a proposal and it's successful? And the way that this works is that claimed coins are regenerated, or are generated actually. So when someone has a successful proposal and they're claiming their coins, new coins are actually minted, right? So you could imagine as well, the way that a transaction works, a regular transaction, it has to have inputs and then outputs. So if my community proposal was even just for 1,000 NAV, let's say, and we didn't use this method where we're destroying them and then regenerating them, the input to that transaction would have like 4,000 inputs, right? Quarter of a NAV is means that 1,000 NAV claimed would be 4,000 inputs, which would pretty much fill up an entire block just in the one transaction. So that's obviously not how we want to do it, because then all of these transactions would be really large. So what we do instead is we do this method where we burn 0.25 per block, and then when a payment request is made and accepted, then someone who mines the block after that payment request is valid will generate these coins and issue them to the person. So they just end up as a new coin-based transaction. Of course, there's some rules attached around that. Anytime we're letting anyone generate coins on the network like that, we have to be really careful. And that's part of why the testing process and stuff has taken so long. We got to be really sure that no one's just able to randomly generate more coins than they are allowed to. So there's a whole bunch of rules that are dictated by this, like, you can only claim less or equal to what's been burned into the community fund and hasn't already been claimed previously, and etc. We've got all these checks and balances to make sure that these always add up and that no one is able to just randomly create new coins when they're not supposed to. And yeah, these coins are actually they can only be created after the network has reached consensus that all of these checks and balances are valid, and that the vote has passed to say that these coins can be unlocked. So that's sort of a good segue into talking about how the proposal system works in general, because that's the mechanism that we've created to allow people to create proposals which can eventually claim these coins. So just going to keep powering through it because there's quite a lot of content. Mainly probably going to talk rather than draw, but that's cool. So the proposal system, if you want to participate in the community fund, effectively, the first thing that happens on the blockchain at least is to create a proposal. So when you create a proposal, yeah, cool. We've added a bunch of new RPC commands which can help manage this from your wallet. So effectively, you can create a proposal, and with that, you specify an address, an amount, the deadline for when the proposal is complete, a description of your proposal, and also the fee that you're wanting to pay. So the minimum fee at the moment is 100 NAV. And this is designed to be an anti-spam measure, basically. So we want to make it a small barrier to entry so that people don't just flood the network with junk proposals, not because that's necessarily, having lots of small proposals is necessarily a bad thing, but it is definitely hard to manage and sort of chokes up the miners who are trying to look at which proposals and evaluate them and vote on them and all that kind of stuff. So this is effectively an anti-spam measure to make sure people have thought about their proposals well and that they genuinely think that they're good rather than just flooding the network. So the idea for this as well is that it might seem like a lot of NAV, and it could be depending on the price per NAV, but what you should do is basically in your amount, you want to include the fee. So if I thought my proposal was going to cost 1,000 NAV to deliver it, I'd actually make my proposal for 1,100. And that way I claim the fee back if the proposal is accepted. And if your proposal is not accepted, then effectively this 100 NAV gets added to the community fund pool. So anyone that wants to make junk proposals can, and it'll end up being a donation to the community fund, which is awesome. Cool. So the basic steps are to create this proposal, and that sort of formalizes the amount. Then this proposal is voted on, and I'll get into the voting mechanic in a little bit. The next step here is to create a payment request. Right, so one of the points of difference between our community fund and some of the others that have been implemented in the past is, well, firstly, the way that we're burning these coins to the blockchain means that we don't control any of it, which is really awesome. And secondly, we've got this two-step process, right, where we create a proposal, and then that's not the end of the story, because we're seeing a lot of community funds have been taken advantage of by people who have effectively scammed coins out of them. So we've created this two-step process where you then have to make a payment request. So to make a payment request, you specify the hash and the amount. And ID, and that's mainly for your own reference. Yeah. So the way that the payment requests work is that you can do as many or few as you like, basically, but they always have to add up to less than what you asked for. So if it's a small proposal, like I just want to, run a campaign on Google Ads or something like this, and it's really kind of quick to implement, I could request the NAV, and then once it's accepted, I deploy the campaign, and then I prove to the network that I did deploy the campaign, and then I would just claim for the whole amount at that point, basically, right? Because the job's done, it was a simple thing, and it's kind of ready to go. For bigger or more complicated proposals, you might actually want to break that into parts. So there can be multiple payment requests made against one proposal. If I was doing something big, like maybe building a website, what I might do is, if it was going to cost, I don't know, 20,000 NavCoin to build this amazing new web portal for Nav or whatever it is, I might ask for even potentially some immediately to get the project going. And then I could come back with, wireframe designs and a sitemap and be like, here's step one, can I have some more? And sort of unlock it on a milestone basis. As you get the designs, you do that, and then you show some MVP pages and whatever, and then eventually the whole thing launches. You make your final payment request because your job's done. So it's up to you how you manage these, but effectively it could be one payment request or it could be multiple. And it allows sort of small and big projects to coexist on the system, and that you don't have to wait for a big project. You don't have to wait till the end, because sometimes that could be too financially burdensome. We've already talked about the fee. So even if a proposal is accepted, that fee still goes to the community fund. So anytime a proposal is created, whether it's successful or failed, this amount is effectively burnt to the community fund. And you can increase this fee, and that does have some impact on the priority of your proposal. If there's two proposals competing for the same amount of coins at the same time, then the one with the highest fee is the way that mechanic works. That one will be accepted first on the network effectively. So that's the basics of creating proposals and creating these payment requests. So I think the next step is to talk about, the voting system itself, right? So voting for the community fund effectively works the same as, well, it works in a similar way to how soft forks work on the network. So it works in cycles, right? So we have this one period, one voting period is equal to roughly 1 week. You know, it's slightly different because the block time's variable and it's based on a number of blocks. But we have these voting periods which miners cast their votes during that period, right? So what happens is whenever a miner mines a block, they can attach a proposal ID or hash and a vote, either yes or no. And that's the way that they show support or you know, no support for a community fund proposal. They mine a block and they attach the ID with a yes or no vote. And then over this 1 week period, we calculate all of the votes by looking at the blockchain and just looking at each individual block, seeing which IDs have been voted on, how many were yes, how many were no. And if the proposal has more than the required amount of votes in a 1 week period, then it becomes accepted onto the network. And if it doesn't, when the week runs out, it gets another chance and it starts again, basically, right? So we look at it in these discrete 1 week kind of blocks. So we have this one week period. We also have a minimum quorum of, I think that's how you spell it, of 50%. So what we mean by that is that if I create a proposal and it's on the blockchain, for a vote to be considered valid, you have to have at least 50% of the blocks voting either yes or no. So you kind of got three things that can happen when you're voting, right? You can someone's either voting yes, someone's voting no, or they're not voting for your proposal at all. So if less than half of the, less than 50% of the people aren't voting at all either way for your project, then the percentages don't count in that voting period. So you need to really, this is going to mean that we have to have an engaged and active mining group, you know, within the community, active mining community, that's going to be monitoring these proposals and really engaging with this process. Because we need at least half of you to be casting votes towards these proposals. And it's not just up to the miners, it's obviously the other way around as well. We're going to have to make sure that people creating proposals are providing all the right information and you know, communicating with the community to let them know about their proposal so that they reach this 50% threshold. So let's assume that we do have 50% of the people who are voting either way for my proposal that I've created. What we then have is 70% to approve. And it's also possible to reject as well, right? So during this 1 week period, if there's at least 50% people voting yes or no, and 70% of those people are voting yes, then my proposal is accepted. If 70% of those of at least 50% vote no, then during 1 week period, then my proposal is flat out denied. If it's like, you know, if it doesn't meet either of these thresholds during a week period, then you'll get another week period to give it another crack. And you basically get 4 full voting cycles to achieve 4 full cycles to achieve either one of these outcomes, right? So if in the first voting cycle maybe you didn't reach the quorum because not enough people knew about it, perhaps in the second one you got like 60% approval, and then in the third week you got over 70%. At that point your proposal is valid, and it doesn't need to run the 4th week, basically, right? And the opposite's true as well. If first week didn't reach the quorum, second week 60% of people voted to reject it, you would go on to the next week. And then in the third week, for example, if 75% of the network voted to reject your proposal, that's it. You don't get the fourth week to try and get a yes vote or swing that vote around. And you'd have to recreate your proposal. And well, actually, you'd have to try and figure out why people voted no. And maybe come back with a better proposal. So obviously, we're looking to make it relatively easy to get these things through. We don't want this to be clogged up with this impossible bureaucracy, but we do need some sort of protections to make sure that people aren't able to abuse the system. So we've had a fair bit of discussion around this, and this is basically what we've come up with through the feedback from the community and through our own sort of thought processes and testing processes. And yeah, that's sort of where we're at with that. So the other thing is the payment requests. Can you still see that far on the right? Okay, no. Yeah, sweet. Miles are real. Yeah. Cool. So the payment requests are effectively the same. So they have a min quorum of 50%, 70% approval, 70% rejection. The only difference is that they run on a 6-week, you get 6 attempts at getting a payment request approved. So 1 month to get your funding approved and a month and a half for payment requests to be made. So I guess the voting's the same, but we're just being a little bit more lenient on the time frame.
At payment requests.
Hello, is it back? Can you hear me again? You should be able to. The thing's flashing. I don't know why that shut off. That's weird. These are new batteries. It's back. Okay, sorry about that. So where did we get to? You didn't hear the stuff about the payment requests?
Yeah, cut off the payment requests.
Okay, so we'll reel back to that. So as I said, we've got proposals and payment requests. They both work on a 1-week period, and they're And we've got, both have a minimum quorum of 50%. And 70% yes, 70% no. And proposals have 4 cycles to get out of one of these states, to either be accepted or rejected, and payment requests have 6. So the idea there is that you've got a little bit more of a chance to get your payments out. It's slightly easier to get your payments out than it is to get a proposal in, just to give people time to get paid, because of course we do want people to actually get paid for their work. So the voting stuff's all the same. From what I read in the latest version of the code, and yeah, we've got a 6-week cycle. So that's pretty much it to do with the payment requests in terms of the voting. And of course, as I mentioned before, all this happens on the blockchain by miners voting for proposals. So now, just checking the sound's still going. Yep, that's still flashing away on the sound card, so we're good. So we want to talk about the proposal states now. So we understand the flow of how this stuff works. They have 5 states: pending, accepted, rejected, expired, and pending funds. So when you first create a proposal, it'll end up being in the pending state. And then if you get, if you pass the votes with the quorums and stuff we just discussed, it'll move to accepted, or it could move to pending funds as well. If it gets denied, it'll go to rejected, and that's the end of the line. If it goes through 4 full voting cycles and it doesn't achieve consensus either way, it'll go to expired, and that's the end of the line as well. So effectively from pending, you can go to either accepted or pending funds. And what pending funds means is that your proposal has been voted successfully and it's been accepted, but there's not enough funds in the community fund to fulfill your request at this point. So there's something like 75,000 new batteries and everything. This is super annoying. Still the old technical difficulties. Has anyone... I don't suppose there's any batteries anywhere. Why is this cut out?
How many batteries do you have?
2 AA batteries.
I just have 1.
And it's not on, so it's that
This is on. This one keeps cutting out, but it's back now.
back now.
Yeah, crap, that's super annoying. Sorry guys, I don't know what's going on. Again, some technical difficulties. We've got the flash new wireless lapel mic, which I think sounds good. I'm not sure if 1 battery is going to help. Maybe it will. I don't know. Should I try it? Is this new? Yeah. Okay, hold on 1 moment. I just put these in yesterday though, so. Check 1, okay, yeah, we're paired again. I don't know, we're just gonna keep going, basically. If you see if you see this thing stop flashing, or there's a monitor on that as well, just let me know as soon as possible, and I'll reset it and we'll try again. And if it keeps on cutting out, we'll just switch to the webcam or something for now. and hopefully we don't have this stuff happen in the future. Why are live streams always something goes wrong? That's okay. All right, so what are we talking about? These states, right? Proposal states. I don't know how much you guys heard, so we'll just run through it quickly again. When you first submit a proposal, they will go into this pending state. If they fail the vote, they'll go to rejected. If they don't vote either yes or no after the 4 full-week cycle, they will move to expired. And the only other both of these states, rejected and expired, that's just the end of the proposal. Can't move anywhere from there. If a proposal is accepted, it can end up in this pending fund state. So if we have a proposal that is requesting more funds than are available at that point in time, it'll move into this pending fund state. And then when the correct amount of funds are available, it will move into accepted. So that does mean that you can create proposals for more NAV than are actually in the community fund, but they'll only ever become accepted once those funds are available. So that's the states of a proposal. Payment states are pretty much the same. They're just, there's a couple less. So with payment states, we pretty much just have accepted, rejected, and expired. Once your proposal is accepted, it has to have the right amount of funds. So they kind of get escrowed away for you. So you know that once it's moved to the accepted state, there's no pending fund state over here because those are already waiting for your proposal ready to go, basically. So yeah, accepted, rejected, and expired. So now I just want to kind of draw this all out so it maybe makes a bit more sense. And we get to understand the time frame that this is working on. So how are we going to do this? How many do I need? Okay. So assume that each one of these are 1 week, these 1 week cycles. So we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'll go one more just for the hell of it, 10. Right? So we got a timeline of cycles. If I submit my proposal here, and that's where it comes into the blockchain, halfway through cycle 0, voting will actually commence here. So that's the start of the voting. And this counts as your first full cycle, right? We'll use a different color. So voting starts from here. And you have up to here for it to be accepted, right? That's the maximum that you can have. Once you enter this first one, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 cycles. And at this point, if you haven't reached a quorum and it hasn't got a yes vote or a no vote, then it will be expired. So let's assume that you submit your proposal, people start voting for it, you get accepted on this, you get 40% on this one. God, that pen's not good. I'm not going to use that one. You only get a 40% yes vote on this one, and then you get more people know about your proposal, and so you get a 75% vote on this next cycle. That means that voting will end at the end of this. So even though you got 75%, so you would have technically got 70% like slightly before the voting period ends. Voting ends at the end of the cycle. So we wait for the end of the cycle to complete. And then this is when your proposal starts. So let's say I submitted my proposal and I said that I only needed 2 weeks, right, to do my proposal. And it's for 1,000 nav, 100 nav, 1,000 nav, right? So that 2 weeks that I specified, it starts from where the voting was successful. So this is effectively the start date of my proposal as well. Actually, I'll use the other one. So that voting ends, and because it was successful, that is the proposal start relative to the deadline which I set myself. So you don't set a deadline as a date. You say, I need this amount of time. So my 2 weeks starts then, which is actually pretty short. But that's okay. You know, some of these things can be quite fast. So this is basically my proposal period here, right? And I'm actually doing the work. Now, that does mean that you have to submit your payment request before the end of your proposal deadline, basically, right? So I might do the work in the first week, and then during the second week, I submit my payment request. Right? And then it doesn't matter that my project's now, the project deadline has now been reached. My payment request is already in there. And with the payment request, I wonder if one of these other pen colors will work. I get my 6 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out to week 11, right? 6. So that would be the voting period for my payment request that I put in. I put it in for 1,000 nav, and now I've got 6 weeks to prove to people that I did the work successfully, right? And get the network to agree with me. So this works in the same way. Let's say I only get 10% the first week, 50% the next week, and then I get 80% on this one. People agree with me. That means that my payment request will be considered successful here. And then the next block cycle, I'll get paid up, right, by a miner. So, and then, yeah, that would be the effective end date there. No, sorry, here. And I get paid in that next block cycle. And then I don't use these ones. But that is how it works. So I hope that makes sense, kind of seeing it on a board like that. So obviously I had to make this one quite short and quite simple because I can't draw something that's 40 weeks long. There's no point. But you can get the idea. Usually, I guess, like for a bigger project, this period's much longer and you might have multiple payment requests happening through it, and you just need to make sure that you submit your last payment request for any remaining amount before your project deadline, and then you get effectively 6 weeks after the project deadline to get that final payment approved. Yeah, so that's about it. You can see that there is a bit of time involved. It's just, there's no sort of way around that. We try to make it as fast as possible, but we also don't just want to make it so fast that bad things get approved and people steal money off the fund and stuff like that. So a pretty realistic time frame to expect to actually go from submitting your proposal to getting paid is like the minimum timeline would be you submit it, you get consensus on the next one, and then you submit a payment proposal at the next one, and then that gets accepted on the third period. So it's kind of like 3 point something weeks, up to 4 weeks is like the sort of minimum cycle that these proposals can actually be completed and paid out in. But 4 weeks, you got to convince the whole network. I don't think that that's sort of unreasonable, but do make sure that you give yourself enough time in this deadline period as well, right? You don't want to end up in a position where you think you've completed it, but the rest of the network doesn't agree, and you're past the deadline, and they vote out your proposal payment request as no, and then it's hard for you to submit. I think it's actually, you can't submit another one after that because the deadline's already passed. So, for the deadline, I'd err on the side of caution and just give yourself a bit more breathing room. And yeah, basically what happens if to any unclaimed funds after the proposal expires is that they're recycled back into the community fund. So yeah, that's basically how it works. We've already talked about how the voting actually works on a network level. So the miners, whenever they mine a block, they attach a vote. So people who mine blocks more often will cast more votes than people who mine blocks less often. So it is weighted towards the people who are most vested in the network casting the most votes, right? Because we assume that they have the best intentions of the network because they have the biggest vested interest in it, basically. So how do you actually do it from your wallet? We've got a bunch of new RPC commands. So there's one to create a proposal. There's one to create a payment request. So that's kind of like if you're making a proposal. If you're a miner, there's a way to list proposals as well. So you can query the blockchain for whatever proposals are available to vote on. Then you've got a proposal voting command as well, where you effectively enter in the hash, which is like the ID of the proposal, and your vote, yes or no. And then the same for payment requests, the hash, and then a yes or no vote. So you can either do that from the command line or the debug window of NavCoin core, or there's a whole bunch of other ways, a whole bunch of helpful tools which we've made to try and make this process easier. If you want to check out the full list of RPC commands, because there's a whole bunch of other ones, like you can check the state of the community fund and see how many coins there are and what proposals are on the network or which proposals you're currently voting for and all these cool things. It'll be published in the changelog, of the release notes of the 4.4.0 version. And it's already also in Alex's white paper that he has published to his GitHub. So you can check it out there. I'm paranoid about this audio. It must have been the battery. Thanks for the spare one, Carter. Must have left it on or something stupid at my desk last night when I was testing it. So don't worry too much about the RPC stuff. We're trying to make this as highly engageable as possible. So, we're not expecting everyone to go in there and do everything by command line. So we have made not just us, but ourselves and, the whole NavCoin community has made a bunch of really helpful tools to make this process as easy as possible, right? So the first thing I'd like to let everyone know is that Sactiniz's next wallet for NavCoin has got a really good interface for this. Inside the wallet itself, you're able to browse all of the proposals, vote them, and it's got a tool for creating a proposal where you fill it out much more like a form rather than the RPC command. So that's all inside the wallet. So that's a really good wallet to get if you're wanting to engage in this and you don't want to deal with the RPC commands. You can just go grab the NavCoin Next wallet. It's all open source and it's got the proposal browser and voting stuff and proposal creator all inside there. So a really awesome job from Sactiniz. Definitely recommend you checking it out. Open source, so you don't have to worry about your funds. And in the background, it effectively just connects to the NavCoin core daemon, which is all open source as well. The next thing is ProdPeak with the Nav Explorer. So that's NavCoin's block explorer that he's built proprietarily for NavCoin. And you can get there at navexplorer.com. I believe he is working on a proposal browser that integrates into that Nav Explorer as well. So that's a good way to view proposals if you don't have the Next wallet. Yeah, you can explore them there, see which ones are currently being voted on, how many votes they've got already, and all that kind of good stuff. And then you can cast your vote from your own wallet as well. We have been working on a proposal creator tool as well that's going to live on one of the websites. So I think, is that navcoin.org or navhub? Navcoin.org, right? Yeah. So that'll be on navcoin.org, and effectively that's just a form on the website that asks you for the required fields. You know, what's the description of your proposal and how much money do you want and what's the deadline and blah, blah, blah. And you'll be able to basically generate the RPC command that you can then paste into the debug window or into your command line to submit the payment request. To submit the proposal. Of course, it doesn't just stop, like this process only really works if you're able to promote your proposal to the network, right? Because they need to know about it. They need to know what it is, how it works, how much money you need, why you need that money. They need to see when you've done the work and agree with that and all this type of stuff. So it's really important not just to immediately submit your idea to the blockchain, because you've only got this 4-week period for it to get voted on. So we've posted some information about this on navcoin.org on the community fund page. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's like a accordion list, which has a whole bunch of information about the process that you should take. But I think it's just really important to understand that there's a few steps you should probably take before you actually create a proposal on the blockchain, right? So the first step is really to engage with the community. Talk about your idea. Like, jump on Discord or Telegram or wherever it is, Reddit, you know, wherever you want to talk to the community, and figure out whether it's something that people care about, or, you know, get some input from people. There might be people that want to help you bring this idea to fruition. So first step's definitely just talking about it and sort of figuring it out and refining it in your head or on the chat channels. Then the next step would be to formalize the proposal, not on the blockchain, but, you know, whether it's on Medium or your own blog, or we've set up some tool. We've set up the Nav Collab. So that's collab.navcoin.org, where you can go and create a space about your project, and you can do a write-up there. So if you don't have a Medium or any of those other things and you want a bit of input from the community there, you can jump on Nav Collab, create a page about your proposal, and yeah, and that can be a place where people can learn about your proposal when they're going to do this voting and all this stuff. So the other good thing about the Nav Collab is there's a directory of users who are on there. And the idea is that people tag themselves with the skills that they have. So if you've got a really good idea, but you want to, you know, you need a graphic designer or something like that, you can go to Nav Collab and you can go to the directory and search for graphic design or whichever skill you need, and then find some people and message them and go, hey, I see that you're on the public directory listing for Nav Collab and you've got some graphic design skills. Here's my page, here's my project. Do you want to get involved? Do you want to help me out with this? And, you know, we try and be as inclusive and collaborative as we can. So once you've gone through those steps, you've talked about your project, you've formalized it, you've published some information somewhere, that's the point that you'd want to actually submit it to the blockchain. And what you can do, the description field for your proposal is actually reasonably short. I can't remember how many characters it is, but you're not really going to have enough space to put the full description there, unless it's a really simple really simple proposal, right? So what you can do though in the description field that actually gets submitted to the blockchain is put in a link to the Nav Collab page, or the, you know, Nav Community navcommunity.net. navcommunity.net, Sac Diniz's website with the forum. You know, that's where you publish your information, and that's how you have a formal discussion about it. So wherever you publish it, your Medium or whatever, you can put that link, put a short description and a link in to the description field that gets submitted to the blockchain, and that's a way to provide more information, right? So when a miner is looking at the proposal browser or whatever, they can just grab that link, put it in the browser, find out all about your project, and then they can make a really informed decision on voting. So once you've submitted it, that's not the end of the road, of course, because you've only got this 4-week period. So hopefully you should have been promoting it to the community before you even submit it. But while the voting's going on, it's really important to engage the mining community and try and get them to vote on your proposal and convince them that it's something that's worth spending money on, and then do the work. Once it gets accepted, you've got to actually do the work to get the payment request. And once you've done the work, come back to the community again, submit your payment request and promote that and let people know the awesome thing that you've done to help support NavCoin, and that you've fulfilled what you said that you would do in your proposal, and then claim your NavCoins and do it again. That's kind of the idea. We're trying to make a self-governed community. I think it's a really, really powerful idea that a system like this, in traditional, like let's say governance, like literally governments, there's kind of this barrier to even being able to suggest a change, right? You already have to be in a position of privilege and power to even just suggest an improvement to the system. You have to be a politician, basically. It's really hard for me, just as one guy, to give an idea to the government and for it actually to be taken seriously, right? It's pretty much impossible. So systems like this are really powerful because everyone has the equal chance of making a change into this system, right? So no matter who you are, I can submit a proposal as one of the co-founders of NavCoin, or someone who decides to stay completely anonymous, has never interacted with our community before. They can submit the proposal too, and both of them have equal weight, right? There's no way for us to block proposals and stuff like that. And they're going to be based on their merits. And if my one's not very good and the anonymous person's one's better, then that will get accepted. And then that will become part of the NavCoin ecosystem. And it'll improve the system. So I think that that's such a powerful statement, right? We're moving from this system where there's this barrier to even be able to ask for change, to a system where everyone can egalitarianly and equally suggest changes to the network, and it's the people who are actively participating in the network who get to decide whether that becomes part of the new system. So yeah, I think that this thing is bloody awesome, mate. It's pretty cool. It's basically, a revolutionary system that we're hoping can be a model for not just other coins, but pretty much an alternative governance model, right? Based on a kind of merit-based system that's all equal. So I think that's about all I have to really say. How are we going? That's been bloody ages, nearly a full hour. I knew that there was a lot to get through, so I did just try and hammer through it, but here we are. So we're at the end. Q&A, what are we doing? We've got some stuff on Reddit, perhaps?
One from Paul was that it might be 50 now to submit, not 100.
Yeah, it's 50.
Nav?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this has been a bit of a moving beast as we've dialed it in. So the minimum fee to submit your proposal is now 50 Nav instead of 100. So as we said, we're trying to make it a pretty small barrier to entry because we do want people to actually create proposals, but we still want to make it significant enough that it's difficult to clog up the system and kind of hide good proposals in a sea of spam ones. So 50 Nav instead of 100, and you can claim it back in your proposal anyway. Who's gonna look at the Reddit? Because I know that there was a couple questions in the Reddit thread. And is there any questions in the live stream?
There's no questions.
Not on Discord, on Reddit. Someone?
I'm having a look.
Matt? Cool. Is my mic still going? Yes. Oh yeah, from the live stream chat, I mean, hopefully, I feel like I've explained this pretty thoroughly. I think this is going to be a good resource for anyone that wants to take an hour out of their day to listen to me prattle on. But yeah, I feel like hopefully that's pretty clear. If any of it's not clear, you know, go to the website, check it out. Some sort of entry-level information is there. And then for the full details, there is Alex's white paper, which, you know, describes all of the RPC commands and all of the voting stuff and how everything works. Can we hire more devs? So this is from, what's the user? Jambababa or something. Can we hire more devs with the C fund, or how do we attract more devs with the C fund? Yeah, so I think the thing that you have to understand is that NavCoin Core is a loose collective of people as well. You know, the idea of this fund isn't for like me personally to put forward proposals to claim to get more devs to join our team. What we'd actually like to see is a more distributed involvement. So absolutely, NavCoin as a community can hire more devs using this. And we really think that, well, I think the best way to go around something like that is probably less to hire someone, but to make quality devs aware that they can earn money. And then they become, you know, it would actually be the dev who submits, hey, I want to upgrade the NavCoin protocol in ways XYZ, make a NavCoin improvement proposal, also make a community fund proposal, and then come along. So I think the real key is going to be promoting this chance of making, of earning NAV to active developer communities. And that way these people will be able to self-engage. Or if you know any developers, you know, it doesn't have to be C++ core dev stuff, but we've got a raft of open source projects, or people can create their own projects, whatever, right? So if you know any devs, web devs or anything, just tell them, hey, did you know you can earn some NavCoin by building whatever you want? Basically, the sky's the limit. So absolutely, we'd love to see more developer engagement, but it's also not just about developer engagement. It can be marketing activities. It could be something completely more abstract, like my one. I'm going to plug my own proposal that I'm putting forward, which is the NavCoin carbon neutral proposal. So I've done some investigation to see how much it would cost to offset the NavCoin network's carbon footprint. So, you know, that's not programming or necessarily promotion, but yeah, I think that's a really awesome idea. So I'm putting that forward. It can be all sorts of things, but development resource is definitely something that we would like to have, except we'd prefer it to be more self-managed than, you know, directly through us. Is there anything else? What's that? Ah, that's a really pertinent question. It is a New Zealand native bird. It's a kia, which is like a mountain parrot, and some flowers and stuff. It's kind of like a Japanese style sleeve, but with New Zealand native flowers and birds. Yeah. When are we getting the? So who's that from? I like to.
Nick the Bubble.
Nick the Bubble 29, great name. When are we getting the next versions of the wallet, right? So the next versions of the wallet are 4.4.0 and 4.5.0. If you want to know the exact details of everything that's in that, you can jump on my Medium post that I put out a little while ago. 4.4.0 is the community fund, and 4.5.0 brings us in line with proof of stake version 3. So that's the basic gist of what's in there, but go to the Reddit post, the Medium post, and read that. How are we going with the testing, guys, for 4.4 community fund? Is there anything else that's come up this week? It's all pretty solid. So we are hoping to release, I mean, we've been trying to release it for a couple of weeks now. We thought we'd be ready a couple of weeks ago, but we did have a couple of small edge case bugs come up. The new goal is to release it next week. and we just have to see how we go through that process, right? It's part of our core developer manifesto that we're never going to release code that hasn't been thoroughly tested, especially when it deals with a consensus change, and especially when that consensus change allows people to generate funds. We have to be super careful about that. You can imagine if there was some weird edge case bug where someone submits like a smiley face as one of the characters in their, an emoji as one of the characters in their payment request, and the system freaks out and somehow issues them like 1 million NavCoin, then that's going to be a real problem. So this is the type of stupid things that we've been making sure don't break anything. And yeah, so the plan is for next week, but it could be the week after that. It could be the week after that. We're trying to get it out as soon as possible, but we have to be sure that it's not going to do anything bad to the network. Yeah, the aim is next Tuesday, I believe. Any more questions?
Some wording on this. What are we going to do about blockchain size increasing and stuff like that?
Because of the community fund?
No, because of just over time in general.
So I don't know. It's not specifically related to the community fund. One thing that we have done with the community fund in regards to the blockchain size, well, firstly, the descriptions are only really short, so that we don't take up a lot of block space by that. The other thing is we don't allow we have thought about it through the fact that we burn transactions and then generate them rather than wedging all of those transactions as an input for one of these payment requests. So that will minimize space on the blockchain. The other thing is part of 4.4. We've got a mechanism in there. So instead of creating 0.25 per block, which obviously takes up some space on the blockchain, every block, we're saying that we will make it so it's like every, I don't even remember, it's like every 50th block or something like this.
50 or 500?
500. It's like, instead of having it all the time, it'll happen every couple of hours or whatever it is. I can't remember the exact number. But yeah, that means that instead of every block, it's like every 50th block or whatever it is, there's a certain amount that gets, no, it is 500, Yeah. 500. Every 500th block, there'll be a community fund contribution, which has to be included by the network consensus. And then that makes it less on the blockchain. Yeah, I think, we do have blocks every 30 seconds. So our blockchain does create a lot of blocks. At the moment, they're still relatively empty. So having a large blockchain full of gigabytes of transactions is a bit of a luxury problem to have. And we can solve those scaling issues as we get closer towards them being a reality. For now, it's not really a big problem. Yo.
I've got one more question.
From Siflu. How's input 004 coming along? So that was my one, I think, was it? The static rewards. Yeah, so that has been coded and it's sitting there ready to test, basically. At the moment, all of our testing capacity and focus is, of course, on the community fund. So we're trying to get that out the door first. Once 4.4.0 is released and the community fund is ready to go, then we will be shifting focus to 4.5.0, which includes the cold staking and the static rewards, and an increase to the community fund contribution amount as well. So yeah, I mean, it's all there. We just need to go through the same process. There's a few things that we need to make sure through that testing process. Like, for example, there's no way for someone to game blocks to try and have a more frequent chance of winning the block. But for the most part, it's coded. It just needs testing. Yeah, which will be what our great new interns, Marcus and Gal, will probably be switching to after this is done, and using all their amazing testing experience that they've built up, helping find bugs on the community fund to help us with that one. Yeah, so quickly, I guess the thing that we also need to understand as well is that the community fund itself is deployed as a soft fork. So it kind of has to go through some kind of process like this as well, right? we don't have the authority, nor do we want the authority to be able to make, explicit changes on the network to the consensus. So we leave everything up to soft forks. So let's say we launch the wallet next Tuesday. It will still have to go through a voting process to get accepted onto the network. I believe the threshold for soft forks is 75%. So, it's not likely that the first week will pass because we might be partway through the week. The earliest that it'll get accepted is if everyone upgrades to the new wallet immediately that second week, and we get 75% or more of the blocks signaling that they agree that the community fund should launch. More likely, it's probably going to be 1 or 2 more weeks after that. And at the end of the day, we're not actually in control of this. Maybe the network decides that they don't want the community fund. Like, we hope that that doesn't happen. We think it's a great idea, and we've been putting a lot of work into it, and obviously the community does support it as well. So that's kind of the timeline for the community fund. We hope to have the software out next week, and then it does take sort of a few more weeks for it actually to activate on the network so people can create proposals and kick this all off. So Tyranny. And is that back? Yeah, I need to get some better batteries. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, we've been going for a long time. I think that the best thing we can do to support the soft fork and try and get it out into people and across the line as soon as possible is simply to go out there and promote it, right? We need to make sure that everyone who needs to upgrade upgrades if they agree with it. And we've got, the exchanges are fine. We manage that, and we can contact them. We've done so many wallet updates over the years. We've got pretty good communication channels with them around upgrading, and it's a pretty simple process for them. So I don't see the exchanges are going to have a problem with this. It's more about the actual miners upgrading, because the exchanges don't mine coins, so they don't count towards the soft fork consensus. It's really about the individuals of the network. So let's get them up to date, and let's continue to instruct everyone, to suggest everyone update. And then we need the community to really rally together around this process, right? And engage in it, create proposals. If you're staking, look for proposals, make sure like at least once a week you're checking what's going on and you're up to date with what's going on. And are we back? Yeah, cool. All right, my microphone's totally cutting out, so that's the end of the NavCoin Community Fund education session. I hope you all enjoyed it, and tune in for the next one. Peace.